A lot of people have asked me what I did to get past the MBE. I've mentioned that I was in the top 90% nationwide on the MBE when I failed the exam. I actually failed it on the PT, having marginal essays and then not doing so well on the PT was the cause. But what was it that I did differently the first time and the second time? Well, I stopped watching videos and I stopped looking at the flashcards that I made. I didn't use Critical Pass or any of those other supplements that helped me get to where I needed to be. I just used Adaptabar, and I did a lot of questions. If you practice starting 3 months in advance and you do 25 questions in the morning and then 25 at night, in 20 days out of 30 every month, you'll do 1,000 questions. That'll put you at the 3,000 mark by the time you're ready to take the exam. The truth of the matter is your numbers will change. As you're doing the MBEs, you'll start to do them a little bit faster, and you'll recognize the information that's coming through, and you'll start to see patterns on how they ask the questions and how the answers are laid out. And as you do that, you'll increase speed. And what I did is I increased quantity as well. So I would do 25 questions in the morning, and I'd do 25 at night, but that would increase up to 50 in the morning and 50 at night. And as you can tell, that just puts you in the stratosphere as far as doing questions. People constantly say there's no way you did 4,000 MBE questions. Do the math. It's very simple. If you can just do that many a day, if you're doing 100 a day, it's only 40 days out of 3 months you need to do that, and you've already cracked the code. Later on, before the exam, I was sitting down and doing 100 in the morning and 100 in the evening. And still, I was able to do that in the prescribed time. The more you do, the better you do. That was my experience. There are a few supplements that you can take a look at, and people recommend that you use either BarMax or UWorld or Adaptabar because they use actual NCB questions that have been used on MBs. And other people say look at Barbary. There's a lot of debate on the Barbary questions being longer or whose are more accurate or who prepares you a little bit better. I would ask you to just waste your time and resort to Twitter and figure that out because Twitter has opinions on everything. But the reality is very simple. Just pick one and move. For me, it was Adaptabar, and I didn't do anything else. That worked for me. Okay. If you are doing Adaptabar or any one of these programs, they have mechanical counters that determine how well you're doing in each subject and how many times you've answered a particular question. And I don't know much about UWorld or BarMax, but I'll tell you that Adaptabar will actually adapt. When I started out, I was hitting 50s. I was doing 50s and maybe 60s every once in a while. And that increased to 55s to 65s and 60s to 70s and 70 to 75. When I finished up and I was a little bit past the 3,000 question mark, I started to get 80s reliably, and that moved up. A few times I would do 25 questions and I would get 100 on them. And it was just that I was gaining familiarity with the exam. The material that's in Adaptabar or UWorld or BarMax, I didn't need to read the big stack of Barbary phone books. Don't get me wrong, I don't have a problem with books, obviously, but I didn't need that big stack of phone books. Why? Because if I wanted to know what they were going to test me on the MBE, I simply did MBE questions because they tested what they tested. I was talking with the Dean of Admissions at UCLA a couple years ago, and he said the best predictor on grades at UCLA is grades. Look at their past grades, and you'll figure out what they're doing in the future. And if you look at the MBE questions, you're going to find out what they're going to ask you in the future. The same holds true for essays, but I'll get to that in a separate video. With the MBEs, there's so many tips out there about what you need to do. Read the call of the question first. Never pick an answer that says never. And I would caution you to follow any advice that doesn't seem to make sense. For me, what didn't make sense is looking for keywords that were in the call of the question and then reading the question to find those keywords. Because what that meant is I would discount everything else that I had read because I was looking for a very specific answer to the call of the question. So it didn't work for me. My advice on the MBE is know the law, and know the law by doing the questions, not by watching videos or flashcards or highlighting in one of the many outlines that you have, but do the questions. That's what worked for me. What you'll find is as your grades go up in Adaptabar, you'll watch your curve go up, you'll peak. Once you reach apogee, you're going to begin to drop a little bit. And don't worry about that. People panic a couple weeks before the exam because their Adaptabar grades are going down. Relax. Adaptabar adapted. And what it did is it started feeding you questions you have a harder time answering. That's where you're going to get all those title challenges in property. That's where you're going to get all the mortgage questions, and that's where you're going to get the appellate jurisdiction questions in civil procedure. That's because you're getting these harder questions. Expect to reach apogee and expect to settle out and come back down. If you come down above 61%, it's good news. It could be better, but 61% is about what you need to pass on everything. To get a 1390 now, you need to get about a 61 on all your essays, on the PT, and on the MBE. Okay? Don't worry about the clock. When you're doing your MBE questions, what I hear from a lot of people is, I just did a test, and I did that test, and I did 100 questions, and I got this percentage. Well, what happens when you take a test is, you read the question, you answer it, you go to the next question, you answer it, and you go all the way down to the bottom, and then you check your grades, and then you go back and check your answers, and you check your success rate. Problem with that is, by the time you go back to question number 1, you forgot the question. You have to read the question again and then go through the answer choices to see why you got what correct or what you got wrong. And that's just a tremendous waste of time. I didn't waste any time with that. I read the question, I answered the question, and I saw right then and there if I got it right or wrong. And then I would just read all 4 of the answer choices. And when it told you why each answer was right or wrong, you just learned 4 points of law. So you don't really need to watch the video. You don't really need to go through the outlines. For me, I learned the law by doing the questions. Those 4 points of law were the 4 points that each question tested. And that's all that I did. And to be able to get into the 90th percentile, and I know it may sound arrogant, but I thought I even did better than that when I passed the exam, because I was going through the questions faster, and I also was getting a higher percentage on adaptive bar the second time rather than the previous times. So my advice is, don't watch the clock. It will tick down, but let it tick down and get over into the answers, read the answer choices, and then make sure that you understand what each right or wrong answer is telling you before you move on. Don't go all the way to the end and reread the call to question. That's just such a waste of time. I also did a few things that no self-respecting law professor would tell you to do, and that's, if you see a question on RAP, just answer C. If you really want to get creative, it's always going to be answer C, and just forget about it. I know there's, oh my God, how can he say that? Well, because for me, I thought I did pretty well in school, and I just never got to RAP. It was something that never occurred to me that this should make sense. And then considering it's in a small number of jurisdictions, take it for what it's worth. For me, it wasn't worth studying. I wanted to put more effort into appellate review and then title challenges and mortgages. Those were the 3 subjects that I was having a hard time with. Later on, as your MBE scores begin to develop up and down, what you'll find is you'll do better in some subjects and worse in other subjects. And if you were hovering around 75%, and then all of a sudden you bomb 20 civil procedure questions, you drop down to 74, then maybe 73%, the standard human reaction is to go do some more of those easy evidence questions to boost up your score again. And that's an easy way to take the test all over again. What you really need to do is focus on your weak subjects. The way that I did this is, a month before the exam, I looked at the subjects that I was testing the most poorly in, and I focused only on those subjects in the morning, and then I continued to do random questions in the evening. A lot of people also have a tendency to go and learn, I'm going to learn civil procedure first, and then I'm going to learn evidence, and then I'm going to move into criminal procedure, or they'll do it alphabetically. And I would caution you in doing that, because what happens is you get to wills and trusts, and you forget all about con law. So for me, I randomized all the way through. That worked for me. Okay, that's all I have on the MBE. It really, to me, it seems like it was, well actually one more thing. Again, I know we have 470 people in the study group this time. And out of that number, 240 are foreign attorneys that don't have the support system of a school here in the United States. And their take on the MBE is, I have to do it. For attorneys coming from different jurisdictions, you don't have to do the MBE if you can transfer it in. However, if you have the time, I would recommend you do take the MBE, and that's because it's simple mathematics. A lot of people tend to carry points from the MBE over into essays. So while it may be a little bit of a hassle now to prepare for the MBE, I would say that will pay off with the extra points that you may carry over. Again, there's exceptions to all of that, and I've had people tell me that, yeah, you know what, I took the MBE and I didn't do as well as I thought I would, and I actually lost points. So it goes both ways. My recommendation, if you have a chance and you're in a foreign jurisdiction, I would go ahead and do it. All right, that's all I have on the MBE.